Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fifth Star. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Albert.
And this is a podcast where we're trying to find our next 5-star movie. And when we agree upon a 5-star rating, this podcast will sink to the bottom of the ocean.
On this episode, we're reviewing Moana 2. And Moana 2 is obviously a sequel to the original Moana. And it's Moana, who's now the chief of her tribe. And she's now faced with another threat to their people, which is this kind of god who's like power hungry and is looking to divide all the peoples of the ocean. And so she sets out to break this curse, and so has to team up with Maui again. And yeah, sets off on another adventure.
Yep.
So we've both written down our scores that we gave it out of 5 stars. And Jamie, I'm going to guess that you gave it a 3.0 out of 5.
Okay, I'm going to guess you gave it a 2.5.
Okay, 2.5.
Maybe
This is
even a 2.
On this out of 5 stars, we will give our initial thoughts, and then we'll reveal our scores, and then go into spoilers. So,
All right.
Jamie, how did you like Moana 2?
Well, it was kind of a mess. I went into it and immediately felt confused.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the setup was extremely, choppy,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the right word for it. I felt like they didn't quite establish Moana being the new chief super clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. And then the whole setup with the bad guy and the whole curse thing, I was really confused about. I could barely follow it.
Yeah.
The music was really lame, which I didn't realize Lin-Manuel Miranda didn't write these. He wrote the first movie songs.
Oh, okay.
And those were fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I'm biased because I really love the first one.
Did
But
you
this music, I was like, oh, Lin-Manuel, you did a bad job. And then I looked it up later and I was like, oh, it wasn't him. They were just trying to kind of copy his style. And
that makes sense then.
I just thought they were bad.
So
It was very disappointing.
Did you rewatch? You said you really liked the first one. I also liked the first one, but did you rewatch it?
So
the first
yeah,
one before
I
this?
wasn't going to,
Mhm.
but then I went home and I was like listening to the old soundtrack on
Okay.
the way home, and I was like, I think I need to rewatch this because I haven't seen it since it first came out, and I remember loving it. And so I rewatched it, and it really holds up. It's so good.
Yeah. So I rewatched it right before this also, and I feel like that was a mistake. Because it reminded me of all the things that were good about that first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I watched this, I just kept comparing it to that and being like, well, this is not as good and that's not as good.
Trust me, if you had watched it like me, you'd done the same thing.
Wait, so you didn't rewatch?
I watched it after watching Moana 2.
And then you were like trying to remember what you liked about the first one, and then it reminded you. Okay.
I think you would have had the same experience as me. I think.
That's fair. Because I didn't remember it ever since the first viewing,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously familiar with some of the more popular songs. But yeah, I agree with you about the songs. None of the songs really stood out at all. They were all so unmemorable.
Yep.
The one that Maui sings, the rock voice, right, sings, and it's just really bad.
Yeah.
He's kind of rap singing, but it's not even good. It's all off tempo, and it was just a little hard to listen to.
Yeah.
But the rest of the songs were just very, I don't know.
Generic?
Yeah, generic, forgettable.
Yeah.
Nothing was catchy ever.
So we were sort of talking about this earlier, but for you all, I believe that a musical's songs have to accomplish something in the story. They need to either give us insight into the character, give us insight into the world, or progress the story forward. And I felt like the songs barely accomplished any of those. Each time a song came, I knew it was coming, but it didn't really do anything. There's this one character, I actually forgot her name. I don't remember any of the characters' names.
Yeah.
Except Moana and Maui.
Yeah. So in this one, compared to the first one, they
Way
have
more characters.
She has a crew now that's with her.
Right.
She has the pig come along in addition to the chicken. Which the chicken is, he was funny again. He was the same character as the first one.
Right.
but then the crew is like just there and they're kind of annoying. Like they don't really add anything to the story.
They had no backstory. They had no depth. They had no anyway. There's this one character who gets introduced and she sings a song, and I felt like her song accomplished absolutely nothing. It gave us maybe a tiny bit of insight into what Moana was thinking, but it didn't tell us anything about her, and she's the one singing it. And I was like, why are we getting, like, I'd rather know about who you are as a character, because I have no idea who you are or like what your powers are or where you came from. At least in the first movie with You're Welcome, we got a whole backstory on Maui. We got a whole insight into his character and the world, and it accomplished so much.
Yeah, before he sings. And then when that song then kind of just deepens those things, right?
Yeah, well, he goes into his whole history, you know? And it made us care about him.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't quite think that a musical has to have the songs progress the plot. I think...
Well, it has to accomplish one of the three.
Okay. I think my bar is a lot lower. I just want the song to be entertaining or fun or catchy, the singing and dancing to be good. Like, it's fine if it's just a good song, you know, in my mind, in a musical. But it wasn't even that, right?
Right.
And it didn't really advance the plot or really give more insight to the character either.
Well, I would argue that that's what makes it a good song.
Okay.
Is when it can accomplish one of the three.
Yeah.
Or all three.
Yeah.
At the same time.
But again, it just doesn't hit any of those notes, or those, no pun intended. But yeah, it was very just bland and forgettable. Even the whole story and the premise, like you mentioned, the whole plot of this god and the curse, I agree with you. They kind of explain it, but then it takes a while for you to really kind of understand why. And part of the reason, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but in the first one, you saw a very clear villain.
Yeah.
Like, you have the lava monster and you see the threat that he poses. In this one, that kind of villain is so vague.
Yeah.
You never really even see like that villain kind of embodied, and he's more of an idea or a concept. And so you're not even really sure what they're battling or what the threat is or how powerful he is. So all of those things are very vague. And even in kind of towards the end and the climax, you never really feel threatened, I think. It's just more of like a puzzle. Like, okay, this is what's going on. How do we kind of overcome this puzzle?
Yeah.
But they're never fully in danger like they were in the first one. The first one, that lava monster was actually scary and terrifying.
Yeah. And because the setup was so sloppy, the payoff felt kind of sloppy too.
Yeah.
Without saying anything specific, I just felt like, I didn't care because the setup was so like, what? I don't know.
Yeah. So I think for me, this is like, compared to the original, and maybe that's not fair because it's been a long time since the first one, but it is a sequel.
It's a sequel that wasn't needed.
Yeah. That's what I felt like watching it too. The whole time I'm like, why did they do this? But we know the reason why. It made 130 something million in opening
weekend.
Yeah, well, the first 3-day as a 3-day weekend, but because it was Thanksgiving weekend and it had a 5-day opening, it was over 200 million.
Wow!
And you know, with Wicked and Gladiator, this Thanksgiving opening set the greatest record of 5-day Thanksgiving kind of weekend. So you know, there was just so much easy money on the table that Disney was just, they can't not do it, right?
It's just Disney keeps doing this. That's frustrating. But
yeah, but especially if you really like the first one and are familiar with it, and you compare it against that, the songs were worse, the characters were worse, the villain was worse, the mission and quest that the plot and story that they're kind of going on is worse. Even Maui, he was more of like a side character in this movie, whereas in the first one, it was really about her and Maui and their kind of chemistry and connection together.
And the conflict, too. Like, they both had inner conflict, and then they all had conflict against each other.
Yeah, until they get to that point of
and it's so rewarding.
Each other. Yeah.
Yes.
Where they build that friendship. And
this one, it felt like there wasn't any conflict, almost. Like, inner conflict. Like, Moana is struggling with figuring out what to do, kind of, but it's so vague and the theme is so vague. I kept feeling the theme was changing. Like, the first movie is clearly about identity.
Yeah.
And, like, what you ascribe value to, And that plays out in everything. It plays out in Maui, it plays out in Moana, and it plays out in, oh no, what's her name? Nefiti? The bad guy. The bad guy, good guy.
The creator.
Yeah, so it plays out in all of them and in the whole story arc. This movie, I was like, okay, I think the movie's going to be about connection and how important it is to connect people. And then it becomes about family and having to say goodbye and like do the right thing. And then it becomes about not knowing what to do and being lost. And then it becomes about wandering. And then it becomes about, and it just like kept changing, that I was like, it's grounded in nothing. Like, this whole movie is grounded in nothing.
So I totally agree with you. On the first one, what we saw the effect of this kind of curse that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
How everyone, Moana's dad wants her to stay in the comfort of home and safety. Moana feels called to go and explore, right? But when the black kind of effect of the curse creeps into the island, starts to corrupt the coconuts and rot them and all this kind of stuff, you realize like they can't just stay where they are.
Yes.
Right? They have to do something. And she realizes that sets her off on this journey. But you really see the effect and impact of that curse and what has to be overcome. There are real stakes there. In the second one, the concept is really this idea of she sets off trying to find people in these other lands and other islands, but she can't see anyone. She can't find anyone. She just sees remnants and leftovers that people used to live here. And so I guess that's the idea, like, about connecting, but it doesn't really feel like they have to overcome that. Like, what's the stakes of if they just stay on their island? Like, that's how they've existed without knowing other people were there for generations.
Yeah.
So, there's no real stakes there. They're just kind of status quo. Now, things could obviously be better, I guess, theoretically, if you connect with other civilizations. But to me, I just kept thinking, yeah, but that's also going to bring war and conflict. And
that's what I kept thinking too.
Yeah. Like, is this really better?
I was thinking they're not going to be able to speak the same languages.
Yeah.
Like, what?
But that's where I think it was trying to build up this theme of the importance of humanity connecting and being one. And that's why the villain, when he feels kind of this idea of the humans together are too strong, so I'm going to divide them.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
like
why
Tower Babel.
Yeah, and that's why the curse becomes about, I'm going to sink this island that kind of connects all these people. And that's why Moana wants to restore it so that she could connect them all again.
Yeah.
So that's the main theme, I think. But you only really piece all that together at the end.
And even then, it's a very weak theme.
Exactly.
Because it's not really played out.
Exactly. And you don't really see why that's absolute necessity for their survival.
Yeah.
They kind of say it, but you don't really feel it. And it's not really visually represented that well. So, yeah.
And then there's just random songs about other things that have nothing to do
along
with
the
that.
way.
So I'm kind of like, I'm just confused. I was lost. The song of You're Lost, I think that song is called You're Lost. And I was like, yeah, that's me right now. So one thing that also irritated me, and Disney does this all the time with their sequels, is how self-referential it became. Like, there were so many like moments or gags that were just, we're referencing the first movie. And I was like, this is why I get so irritated with sequels most of the time, is because half of the gags are just recycled old material.
Yeah.
And it's just irritating.
Yeah, because in the first one, I remember when I rewatched it the night before, being surprised at how funny it was still.
Yeah.
Like, I was really laughing a lot, and, the chicken gags and all that kind of stuff. But then this time, they were doing the same gags.
They reused it.
Yeah, but it didn't feel fresh. And so therefore it wasn't funny anymore. The second one just wasn't very funny or enjoyable.
They just kept pointing us back to the first one, and I was like, you shouldn't be pointing us to the first one because
you're not going to really live up to it.
You're not going to live up to it, and you're just going to look worse.
And maybe this is where like Frozen 2 did a better job with a sequel, because it felt like an evolution of the story. than like a rehashing. Whereas like Incredibles 2, I don't know, some of these other kind of Pixar and Disney sequels, they just haven't really lived up when they just regurgitate the first formula.
Yep.
You kind of have to evolve it and take the story in a different direction. But am I remembering Frozen 2 right?
I mean, I still think Frozen, the first one, is better, but I do know people who prefer the second one.
Yeah, because at least it feels different, right?
Yeah, it expanded the world.
Yeah, but Moana 2 is very much a rehashing of the first one. Okay, so I guess that you would give it a 3.0. I'm guessing now that you went lower than that. So out of 5 stars, you gave it?
I did give it a 3.0.
Oh, okay.
But I think I'm going to lower it.
Okay. Based on our talk.
Literally, just like talking about it more, I was like, I don't think it even deserves a 3.
Yeah.
Like, there's just nothing. So you did guess correctly.
Yeah.
So you still get the points.
Okay. The fake points that don't add up to anything.
I just don't think there's much redeemable about this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
So you guessed I'll give it a 2.5, and I did give it a 2.5. So you both got it right.
And we agreed.
And we agreed. Yeah. Because I was initially throughout maybe the first half of the movie, I was kind of thinking this was just a 3.0. But then it just, it's too convoluted and it's too repetitive and not as funny.
Yeah.
So for all those things, but I also don't think it's a really bad movie. It's just still within the world of generic and average, but also below average. So yeah, I give it a 2.5.
That's why I said 3 too, because I was like,
it still feels
it's
generic,
a Disney movie. It's still got like, I don't know, the lightheartedness.
Yeah.
But then the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, there were 3 directors on this, right? Or 3 writers.
Oh, were there?
And I was like,
maybe that's part of the problem.
Maybe that's part of the problem. But I'm also like, the fact that it passed through so many lenses and it still like was so bad. I think a 2.5 is where I should land.
Okay. Yeah.
So first of all, if I were to, I don't know, rewrite or rearrange this movie a little bit, I think it would have been so much more powerful if instead of the sister being a character.
Okay, so we're going to get into spoilers now.
Yeah, we're in spoilers now.
Okay.
The sister is just like a random addition. There's like quite a big age
the
gap.
little sister.
The little sister.
I was like already forgotten.
Yeah, she's completely forgettable
Yeah.
because she really doesn't do anything other than being like, "Don't leave."
Yeah, but
that was her whole purpose.
That does become Moana's main conflict that they set up because she's worried that she's gonna not come back and she's gonna disappoint her. She wants to get back to her,
but it's not strong enough.
Okay, so you propose.
This is what I think would be stronger. It's her daughter.
Oh, okay. So,
dude. Think about how that think about how that grates on the whole connection thing. Because the person that she has the deepest connection with, she's actually leaving in order to reconnect the world, so to speak.
Oh, she's willing to sacrifice her deepest connection.
To connect everyone else. So it's like this big inner turmoil. But then also there's this like conflict of, am I a terrible mom because I left my daughter? And we could age her down a little bit. We could age the kid down even if we wanted to.
Like a newborn type.
Well, maybe like still being able to talk, but maybe like 2 or 3 instead of, I think this girl was like 5 or 6. But yeah. And then just having that be a way harder decision to leave her behind. And I think it would be so cool to have like a Disney princess. Mom. I know she's not a princess, but like Disney main character who's a mom. Oh, think of how much more powerful that could have been. That's never been done before. Yeah.
Well, I like the mom angle, but one thing that I thought this movie was going to do in the sequel was do the classic, okay, she's the chief of her people. Yeah. But it's all, she's going to now have an arranged marriage culturally, that she's set up with, but she doesn't like the guy, and now she wants to leave on this quest.
Be brave.
Yeah. And so I thought it was going to kind of do that whole thing, but I ended up feeling glad that they didn't do that, because what I like about the first one is that Moana is a really great protagonist. She has a lot of agency in the first one that makes her feel like she really makes choices. She really puts herself out there.
She works so hard.
Yes. Yeah. And it's her determination. She almost reminds me of an anime character. It's it's her determination more than her strength or super
Mm-hmm.
genius or anything like that. She has no superpowers that really helps her overcome. Even
Yeah.
more so than Maui, who does have superpowers, right? But
Yeah.
he's kind of down on himself in the first one at certain points, questioning himself, and
And
she's the
she
one,
helps
yeah,
him.
through her belief, right, and positivity and just raw determination. So that was what was really so good about her in the first one. And I thought in the second one, if it was relegated to she has to find love and all that kind of stuff, it kind of would nerf that part of her. So I'm glad it didn't go there. And so maybe
Me too.
that's why they didn't do the baby thing.
I mean,
Because then she
have
would
her husband just be like a side character.
yeah, I
I
guess.
mean, have the husband be like supportive of her, but really the conflict is about her and her daughter.
Okay.
I think they could have gone away with that without it being all about like love interest.
Yeah. Or maybe she got married, but then he ended up dying or something. And
Ooh, that'd be really tragic.
really dark.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what causes the need for them to go out and she has to
Whoa.
have this curse be broken. I don't know.
That was
But
another thing, I guess, that was kind of missing from this one. Like in the first one, her grandmother dies, and that's what sparks her to leave. And it's like a very powerful moment. And then, oh my gosh, the grandma coming back as like the stingray ghost and singing that whole song to her is so powerful. I was like crying again. Yeah, I think that if something had happened with the daughter, or I don't know, that could have sparked her having to leave again, that would have been more powerful. She kind of is just like, she sings that song. I can't even remember. I couldn't tell you a single thing about that song. But Beyond or something, it's basically a replica of How Far I'll Go, but it's just worse. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sad because I don't want to leave my sister behind, but I need to go." And it's kind of like, well, yeah, duh, go. Like, it's just your sister. If it had been her daughter, that would have been such a harder choice. And I don't know. I'm just mad that like they added a character that was kind of pointless, and then yeah, her whole crew was added characters that were just kind of pointless.
Yeah, they were pointless.
They served no thing, and they weren't even funny. The guy that was like a fanboy was the most annoying character.
Yeah, he was pretty annoying. I thought the engineer girl, like she had some potential, but they just didn't really do much with her.
Anything with her.
Yeah,
she was a character.
Because she was a cool character. She was really smart and innovative, and
it would have been cool if the engineer lady, like, you know, really struggled halfway through, like, oh, I'm a failure, you know, because she's clearly a perfectionist. And so every time the ship, like, you know, gets buffeted or messed up, she'll be like, oh, I'm a failure. Like, I should have made this better. And then Moana could be like, no, like,
yeah,
you're still amazing. You're still, you know, and then the same maybe with the fanboy too. Maybe he fails in front of Maui and he's like wrecked by that. Because I think instead what happens is he almost dies, right? And then he's like traumatized by that, which is kind of like weak.
Yeah.
And then the farmer guy, maybe like he sort of has a change where he goes from being crotchety
okay,
to embracing
he embraces
the life,
the community that they have, their friendship.
So he has like the most change, but it would have been interesting to see him go through something like harder,
more significant.
Yeah, like they could have done so much with those characters, and instead they're just like random side gimmicks.
Yeah, and then in terms of the other side characters that we come across, we have the slime guy with the coconuts. And that slime character was just so random.
It was.
Like even
Although
stylistically,
it screaming was funny. I did laugh when it screamed.
But stylistically, it felt like it was out of SpongeBob all of a sudden. It's like, why is this in Moana? It doesn't even seem to fit. We have the vampire girl who has a whole song, and then she initially, you know, it captures Maui but has feelings for him and all this stuff. But then with Moana, she decides to help him because she's under the curse of the bad demigod or the evil god. So she wants to help Moana break the curse. But it still doesn't make sense. Like, why does she then still bind up Maui?
She was the most confusing character.
Yeah, and then now all of a sudden, so we thought she was going to be kind of the henchman to the evil bad guy. And because we never see the ultimate villain, and we kind of see his face, the outline of his face in the clouds a little bit, but she was, more of the threatening presence.
Yeah.
But then she just all of a sudden helps Moana and helps them all kind of on.
Yes.
And then she disappears. Like once they overcome, I thought she was going to come back and
No.
yeah, maybe her and Maui get together or something. I don't know, but she just disappears from the story. And so they kind of fill her, I think she fills the void of what the shiny crab was in the first one, which I didn't super love in the first one either, the shiny crab, but I thought the shiny crab was better at least because his song was catchier and it was this kind of weird world that they were building that she was descending into.
And the shiny crab brings about Maui's Dark Night of the Soul, which is very important.
Yeah.
So,
and he's
like,
also
pivotal.
a very menacing villain that they have to actually overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Not like the vampire girl who all of a sudden just decides to help them
for no reason.
Yeah.
And it's so confusing.
Yeah. And it was all just so she can convey to Moana this message of, oh, it's better if you can't find the best way forward is not straight, but the roundabout way. And then in the final moment when they can't figure out how to raise the island, she goes, oh, yeah, I just need to go the roundabout way, which is down, which is kind of the direct way. I don't know.
It was actually the direct way.
Yeah.
The first thing was the indirect way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah,
it
was just really convoluted and
yeah, and that being like the plot twist was so weak.
Yeah.
I mean, in the first one, her realizing the lava monster is the island.
Yeah, that was a big kind of plot thing. Yeah.
It's such a great reveal.
It is.
And it again emphasizes the theme.
Mm-hmm.
So let's also talk about the end really quick.
Yeah.
When all of the boats come to the central island.
Yeah.
And they're all from different tribes. I immediately felt fear because I was like, there's no way they're just going to all be happy and hugging each other. They're going to be drawing weapons and fighting. And this is just going to start a huge island war.
Mm-hmm.
The whole connecting thing didn't really work.
Yeah, I agree. I felt okay, this might be I mean, I guess the idea is that she had that beckoning call that she puts out, and then first the chicken does it. You think that was it, someone calling back. It's just a chicken, and then you hear real call. So I guess the idea is that people in the other islands have been looking for people also, but they haven't been able to hear each other because this God has kept them disconnected. Yeah. So now that they can hear it, they come kind of peacefully and welcomely. So that part didn't bother me as much, but I still felt that, well, okay, that's kind of good for now, but eventually you guys are going to just turn to tribal wars because that's just the nature of humanity that we've seen in history, right?
Exactly. And they're all going to want the best island for themselves, right?
So like, is it really good that we're all connecting together? And that's where it really fails. We don't really understand why the people need to be connected.
Mm-hmm.
It just assumes that the idea of people getting together is just a positive thing.
Yeah.
And that we're going to root for that.
Right.
But without that being established, we don't really care. Or it feels more like this is just a step back. Potentially.
Right. And like them being divided in the first place, that division isn't just going to go away now that they can see each other. The division remains, with the language barrier, because it didn't show them talking. The cultural barriers, I'm sure they're going to think that their ways are better than others. Yeah, I didn't feel any sense of like unity at the very end when they're all like drinking the coconut water or spilling the water. I don't know what they were doing with the water. It just felt like, oh no, you've opened Pandora's box.
Yeah. Now, one thought I had was at the end of the first one, people had been in fear of going beyond the reef. And but it ends after her successful victory. They all get on rafts and they're all moving together as a tribe on the water.
Yeah.
So what I thought the second one was going to do was now they're all on the water and they don't go back to the island and they're exploring. So I think
cool.
That would have been maybe better. The fact that when we start the second one, they're just right back on the island and she's the only one going around looking for people, I thought was a step back in what the first had established. So if they're all kind of on the water seeking a home, seeking to find people, they can't go back. And for whatever reason, I think maybe there would have been more reason and impetus to be like, okay, well, we can't live on these boats forever. We have to find other people.
Yeah.
Or, maybe what it could have been is that their people are on other islands that they've been disconnected from.
Like their ancestors.
Like, that they've been split. And so they're actually trying to find
their relatives. Yeah.
Yeah, or her relatives, like her long lost whatever.
That would have been way more interesting.
Yeah, like their people have been divided by this god, and now they can't find each other. And so you have these, tribes that have incomplete families.
Yeah.
And so now they're on this journey on these boats to try to reconnect now that they've been able to get beyond the raft or beyond the reef.
That'd be cool.
Maybe that would have worked better.
Yeah, like maybe her mom's parents
are
from like a different...
And this is part of her growing as a character and exploring more of who she is in her past.
Yeah.
And she won't know that until she finds her other lost relatives who have the answers to her past.
And that's what we were talking about originally with like the problem with Disney sequels. They need to expand the universe or expand the character more. And that would have accomplished that.
Yeah.
That's so frustrating.
So I don't think either of us would recommend watching Moana 2 if you guys are considering it. But if you have seen it, I guess let us know what you think.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
You can follow us on Spotify, Letterboxd, YouTube, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. And next week, we're going to be reviewing The Piano Lesson, which currently is streaming on Netflix. So if you get a chance, watch it and join us next week as we continue our quest for the 5th star.